see. Okay. I think this actually worked. Yeah, I see my face moving on YouTube. Right, yeah, let's go with this. Okay, so we have 8 people on the attendees list. Hope that more people are coming. So I said let's just give it just a couple of minutes more, right? And then in around 6:10 or something, we can start, right? I'm going to mute myself now. Okay, I think at least the YouTube is streaming now, and we can start. I don't know if if Dima is around already, but he's sitting. Dima is our second speaker, but I know he's sitting right there in another room, so he will be with us. All right, so let's start. Welcome everyone. This is the WebCore meetup. It was supposed to be offline this time. We were really waiting for a long time to make it a physical event, and we almost pulled it off. But just before the event, the Dutch government decided to bring another lockdown, unfortunately. So, but bear with us. We the budget that we didn't spend on pizza and beer this time, we could put into the price for the quiz. So stay with us for that. Yeah. So welcome. My name is Max. For those who are with us for the first time, this is our meetup is called WebCore, which stands for core web technologies that we're trying to cover, and basically everything beyond frameworks in web development. WebCore also kind of hints for hardcore. So what we're trying to do is to cover advanced technical topics, and we try to invite speakers who really know what they're talking about. And that's also part of the reason why our events are so rare, because it's sometimes it's hard to find the good speakers. We're trying to kind of choose quality for quantity, but I hope it will change soon. So yes, I should mention that we do have a code of conduct. I mean, it's just standard stuff. Basically, let's be nice to each other, because then we can benefit from it. The exact text of code of conduct is on our website, webcore.group. And before we start, just a little bit of logistics, what's going on, what's going to happen today. As usual, we have two talks today, two actually really interesting talks. They about 30 minutes each, and there will be Q&A sections after each talk. And after that, we'll have the traditional web platform quiz, and with some nice prizes today. And yeah, so usually we have two talks, one from a speaker who sort of represents a web platform community, and another speaker to represent the web development community. As you can imagine, sometimes the difference is quite vague. It's often the same people, but we'll like to try. The chat is open, as you can see, so you can post whatever you like, as long as it's nice. And the questions we will do after the talk. And I really encourage you guys to ask your questions yourself, like speaking. So you can raise your hand here in Zoom, and I can give you the permission to unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question. But we also have the Q&A section, Q&A feature open here in Zoom for those who want to ask anonymously for some reason. So that's basically it. And I think now we can move to our first talk. Our first speaker is Vadim Mccabe. He has been doing front-end for quite a while now, and he's quite well known among, especially among Russian-speaking engineers, because he, among other things, he is the founder of the web standards community. He's also the host and the producer of several podcasts, which is how I know him, where I know him from. for all Russian speakers here, I would really recommend the Web Standards podcast. I think it's a great way to stay up to date with everything that's going on in the web platform. And today he has some audacious things to share about adaptive web applications. So please welcome Vadim Mccabe. The floor is yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Should I share my screen first, I guess? Yeah. So basically, it told the audience everything they need to know about me. But, you said that usually your speakers, they know what they're talking about. That's a lot of pressure right now. But I'll try to keep up. Anyway.
Well, I mean, if you're here, I think you already know.
Okay, thanks. That's a lot of trust. So I'm actually Vadim, and I'm going to talk today about the conditional adaptive interfaces, conditional adaptive CSS. So we're going to focus on performance, CSS, and things like that. Just a few additional words about myself. So this community, WebCore, is based in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Currently, I'm based in St. Petersburg, Russia, but there's actually one thing is going on right now. I'm in the process of moving to Berlin very soon. So next week, I'm gonna arrive to Berlin and stay there for a while. I don't know for how long. I'm gonna live and work there. If you don't know why the tractor, ask your Russian friends, and they'll explain to you the joke. So yeah, you'll find me soon in Berlin and in Europe, I guess. We'll see each other on conferences and meetups. But for now, yep, I'm here online from St. Petersburg, Russia, and we're going to talk about CSS. CSS in general, and then some things related to loading, including CSS to your web pages or web applications, and performance. That's the main subject today. So CSS, how we usually write it? There is an idea among web developers these days that modularity is good, meaning that we usually don't write a CSS in a single file. We usually have a number of files, usually like a lot. Sometimes like per page, sometimes per section on your page, sometimes per every icon. Sometimes you have, I don't know, atomic CSS and things like that. But in general, usually it boils down to a single file at the end. So you have a lot of components, you have a lot of modules, or whatever you call it, but in the end, you have a single CSS bundle, whatever you call it, index CSS, style CSS, or just hash sum of this file. And how do we include those CSS files? How we combine them together into index CSS? Well, usually it's imported in some way, well, by using native import statement in CSS, or some made up thing that in your JavaScript for Webpack and things like that. And it's all then combined together using some tools. You might know those logos like Gulp, PostCSS. Yeah, Gulp is still relevant in some cases. PostCSS, Webpack, maybe even Vite. So yeah, there are many tools that could pack your resources, combine them together into a single file. And that's what's happening with CSS usually. And once it's all combined, we have index CSS file. Well, usually it's like this, index CSS. And it's usually huge. I mean, compared to your typical JS bundle, it's tiny. Compared to a typical GIF, like 10 megabyte GIF on your page, it's tiny. But there is a problem with this CSS. It's blocking rendering while loading. So nothing's going on. But more on that later. So we're writing our CSS modular these days. That's good. We're combining it together into a single bundle. But what's going on inside of this CSS? Well, in modern interfaces, they have to be adaptive, meaning that you're using mobile, you're getting one version of your interface. You're using tablet, you're getting another, desktop, and yeah, everything in between. So basically, you need to use some sort of way of adapting your interfaces. And historically first and quite common is mobile first. How it works. You have, for example, you have a component called header, and you want to specify tomato color for the text of it for mobiles, for mobile devices, and yeah, for small breakpoints, I would say. And you just write it down as is, header color tomato. Then at some point, at some breakpoint, you want to have different color, and you write it down like this: min width 768 pixels, and then color plum. And then you do the same thing for desktop breakpoint, for example, but with a different color. And you know, the way it works reminds me of paint. You see, imagine you have a bucket with tomato paint. What is happening right here? You're taking this bucket and you're just pouring it over your page. Yeah, everything is tomato. Then you make a few steps further, and you're taking another bucket of paint and you're pouring it over tomato. And starting from this point, everything is tomato, and then everything is plum, for example. And then you're making a few further steps, and you're pouring another bucket of paint. And it becomes a little bit messy, if you ask me. I mean, you have to override some properties, some styles. And in most cases, it's not just a color property. In most cases, it's more than that. It's display grid, display flags, some margin spottings, and a lot of different parts of your interface that has to be changed because there is a certain breakpoint reached. So it becomes, yeah, quite messy. That's why it's usually complicated when you're exploring the other people's code. But when it's yours, well, we get used to it. There's another approach called desktop first, and it works, yeah, almost the same. But instead, you specify desktop color first or desktop styles first, and then you say max width. So it's maximum width when those styles would apply. It's super complicated. It takes a few seconds for me, like almost every time, to read those things and wrap my head around it. And yeah, so you're starting from desktop and you're going towards tablet and then mobile, and you're getting pretty much the same result. And again, it's the same messy thing. You have to override your styles, but you're starting from desktop and you're going not from 0 to infinity, pouring your paint buckets all over the place, but you're actually starting from desktop and you're going towards the 0. But it's the same thing. And in the end, we're getting something like this. Just a sec. We're getting something like this. Some people might call it beautiful. Some people got used to it. But yeah, it's modern art. No, it's just a state of the art. I mean, that's what we do these days. And we got used to it, and we probably don't have a choice. Well, I guess. What's next? Next, we need to include your resources, your styles to your page. And if you think that I'm telling like typical thing that you already know, yeah, that's true. But I have to remind you all those things before I reveal my new ideas regarding this. So bear with me. So once we adapted our interfaces, we need to do something with linking it to our pages. What we usually do? Well, that's it. Link rel style sheet, href, index CSS, done. Some people in some project they also include Google Fonts and some external resources sometimes like Bootstrap and things like that. If you can, please avoid doing that. External CSS is also rendering, blocking rendering, and it's different location, and it takes time to get it from other websites. And some people, like best of us, they also include print CSS. How it works? We usually include extra CSS file and then say, okay, when media is print, and so when we're printing something, then apply these style sheets. So browsers, so those styles are locked by print media. They are not applied to your regular web pages. Yep, it happens. Some people also, some people also split some parts of their interfaces. For example, help pages, catalogs, galleries, and things like that are not essential on the main page. So they could make their CSS bundle smaller. And this is the good thing. Please try to implement something like this to your CSS bundle. It will help the initial rendering on the main page. Yeah, and everything I just explained to you combined somehow affects performance of our websites and web applications. And usually in a bad way, because we're combining everything together. And to understand the problem, we need to go, again, go through the things you probably already know, but we need to go through, to focus on them to understand the problem better. So how page rendering actually works. Browser requests the page. I'm not going to go through the whole process. I'm going to focus on CSS only. Browser requests the page. What is the page? It's HTML. So HTML starts loading. It actually starts streaming, meaning that browser can actually parse it and understand and take some resources out of it before it finished loading. So browser usually finds some styles. And once browser sees files, CSS files, it starts loading them like crazy with the highest priority possible. Because when you have HTML and CSS, you can combine them together and render something. And browser is trying to render something as soon as possible. So styles start loading, and once more styles are found, included in your HTML or imported in your CSS, browsers start loading another styles, and CSS loading again and again and again. So it sounds, I mean, I'm trying to make it as slow, as painful as possible, but it really depends on loading CSS. And while this happening, our user sees exactly this, meaning nothing at all. Our pages are blank until we have all the CSS we have, all the CSS we included to our page. Why is it so? Because CSS, just like HTML, it could be actually parsed and rendered declaration by declaration, because it's declarative, you know, just like HTML. But since CSS is cascading, you can override some styles on the first line of your CSS file and the last line of your CSS, meaning that you have to load all the files you have to actually start rendering. That's the beauty of CSS. That's the curse of CSS. And once we have everything done loading, let's render something. And it might sound lazy, it might sound inefficient to you, and you want to say to your browser, you just go home, you're drunk, you're too lazy, you're too slow. But to be honest, we don't have a choice, really, because first of all, browsers are not lazy. They're doing everything in their power, and they're constantly improving to render your web pages as fast as possible. It's their business. They're not just being lazy. And unless you have some C++ skills, there's nothing much we can do about it on browser side, because it's already super optimized. So we have to do something on the side of our applications, and we have to somehow, I don't know, think different. I probably know the company behind this slogan, but let's try to CSS different first. Imagine you have some website. Like I took some random web dev page. Well, not random. It's a learn responsive design by Jeremy Keith. I highly recommend reading this. It's the ongoing part of this web dev platform. And you have desktop and some tablet design. And you have different styles for each breakpoint. For example, we're going to style this menu. I'm not going to use the real CSS from WebDev website, but I'm just going to use some fake styles. So imagine we have menu. And those styles like margin, padding, list style, you need it on every breakpoint of this website, because it's just basic browser defaults that you need to reset somehow. Margin, padding, list style. Because there's a UL HTML element used. You don't have to be smart about it. You need it. You need those styles, your base styles, on every page of your site. Then for tablet layout and for mobile layout, like starting from breakpoint 768 pixels, we need some certain styles. And if you look at this, I say starting from this breakpoint and less, meaning that I'm isolating my styles between 0 and 768. So they're not just poured over the place. They're not spilled around. I'm isolating it in a certain breakpoint. So those styles will be applied only to breakpoint from 0 to 668 pixels. And then when I need to do something for desktop, I can do something like this. So starting from more or equal 768 pixels. And I can do something completely different. It was grid layout on the previous breakpoint and flex layout, and they don't interact with each other. They don't affect each other in any way. So I have two separate buckets of paint instead of just a mess of a paint on a single surface. And that's the idea of this CSS different. And you might ask, what is this? You might ask, what's the width less than 768 pixels? Because usually it looks like this: max width, min width. It's actually a new syntax of media queries. So you can actually write your media queries in human language. I mean, it's not human language, but still, it's much more easier to understand. So it's already supported in Firefox. It's gonna be supported in Chrome Canary very soon, or maybe it's already supported in Chrome Canary. So I expect next year it will be available in Chrome and Firefox stable, and probably in Safari someday. Maybe they'll catch up sooner this time. So yeah, you can do this with, and you can do this with more or equal, and it will be translated to min width 768 pixels, like using the old syntax. Or you can even do things like that. You can have like minimum, maximum, and something in between. And this will be translated, guess what, to this thing. It's going to be min width 768 and max width 1023 pixels. Well, it's really unnecessary to do this kind of thing on your own, because there is a post CSS plugin you can do that can do this for you. So if you want to write using this new syntax in your CSS, you can apply the post CSS plugin for it, and will be converted to old syntax for old or just modern browsers, until we have it in stable browsers all over the market. So yeah, and once I started to write my CSS like that, That's not all the trick. That's not all. I have something else going on in my head. And I thought, what if we can take those breakpoints and separate them into files and include them file by file and ask browser to load only files it needed. Something like this, like base CSS. Remember this menu, margin, padding, list style reset? We can load some basic CSS for every breakpoint, and then include mobile, tablet, desktop, and then probably, I don't know, include some media queries inside of those files and ask browser not to load those files because those media queries are inside of it, something like this. That was my first thought. Of course it doesn't work, because there's no way to tell browser, please stop loading those files because I don't need them at this certain breakpoint. So yeah, it does work, obviously. But then I thought, wait a second. What if we can do something like this? What if we can include our base CSS and then mobile CSS with extra attribute? Remember those print styles? Those are not applied until we're actually printing. And in this case, instead of print, we can say width less than 768 pixels, and they won't be applied the same way. And they won't be loaded probably. You know, we're gonna save some traffic because of it. And we can do the same thing with tablets and desktop, and we can have, this beauty. Well, of course, we'll need to convert it to old syntax to make it work in modern browsers. Well, in browsers these days, maybe next year where it's going to be easier for us to read and write, but still, and it looks very, very promising. I made a demo out of it, and nope, doesn't work. If you look at the network panel, it looks like this. So you have a demo with the code I mentioned on the previous slide, and we have every file loaded, no exceptions. Base, desktop, mobile, tablet, yeah, everything. Yeah, thank you for listening. Yeah, that was a failed experiment. Well, not really. I realized after exploring a few other panels, a performance panel actually, that it actually works, but not the way it's supposed to or I expected it to. It works like this. So I made a demo. This demo looks like a simple page with a very clear difference between desktop, tablet, and mobile versions. How it works. I have base CSS, just 70 bytes, with some universal styles available for every breakpoint. I have mobile CSS with different background color, and you can look at this CSS and say, like 5 kilobytes? Are you crazy? What did you do? Well, I actually made it huge. I made it bigger by including base 64 graphics to it, just to make it bigger, because I wanted to see the difference. I did terrible thing with tablet CSS. It's already 62 kilobytes, and this 241 kilobyte for desktop CSS. It just, yeah, never do this in production. Never do this even for demo. So I have different files with different weight, and I'm including it in the way I just showed you before, with some media attributes and some expressions in them. And that's how it looks. I went to performance panel and recorded how this page is actually loaded. I used network throttling to like slow 3G or something. And I also enable screenshots to see how it actually rendered. And this is what's going on here. If you know your performance panel, you could probably tell what's going on here, but Don't worry, I'll explain. So right here, we have a waterfall of all resources that are loaded. On this page, it's just a number of CSS files, like 4 of them. And here we can see that some events happening and some page rendered, and this is just a mobile viewport. As you can see, all 4 files are loaded. And how it actually works? As I said, it worked, but how? Well, if you look at this line, this is where the rendering happening. So you can see the screenshot, and you can see DOM content loaded, first paint, and first contentful paint. And it happened not after all the CSS is loaded, but only after base and mobile CSS are loaded. So tablet CSS and desktop CSS are not blocking the rendering, meaning that they will be available very soon once they're loaded, but rendering will happen as soon as we have all the files we actually need for the certain breakpoint. And if you hover over those files, you can see that base CSS was loaded in 2 seconds with the highest priority. And if you hover over tablet CSS, you'll see it took almost 5 seconds with the lowest priority. So by adding media attribute with some expressions to our link elements in our HTML, we're actually lowering priority of CSS, and they're not rendering blocking anymore. So browser analyzes them and makes the decision what's the rendering blocking, what's not. And if you wondered what's going to happen if once I have removed all the media attributes on a typical web page, rendering will only happen when the desktop file is loaded, like 10 seconds later on slow 3G network. So those 3 attributes with some expressions made the whole difference. And this is, that's the magic. That's the point I made this talk, actually, because I realized that it's possible to split your files into separate parts and make them work better, make rendering happen faster. And you can guess what's going on for tablet. We're loading base CSS, we're loading tablet CSS, and once tablet CSS is loaded, we're rendering everything. So first paint, first contentful paint. It just happens that mobile CSS is small enough to be loaded faster than tablet CSS, but doesn't matter, because if it was larger, it wouldn't block rendering. That's the most important part. And you can see those blue dots. When they're bright, it meaning that it's high priority. If they're pale, meaning that they're low priority. It's just a quick look. Quick glance, and you can see that those are blocking or not. And the same things happens on desktop, but much further. Because desktop file is larger, I made it larger. It's blocking rendering, but not the other ones. And this is very, 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 very cool. And it's not just the window width that we can use to say browser that those styles are not needed for the current situation. And you can look at window width as user preference. When you're reading your web page like this, it's your preference to read it vertically. If you rotate it, it's your preference to read it this way. The same applies to color scheme, image or screen density, your network connection, and capability of your screen, like high contrast mode and everything. So those are preference. So it's possible to use it for dark mode the same way. I recently I made a demo for my YouTube channel with a switcher. So I have a switcher that switch from day to night, and yeah, it works the same way. I have light CSS connected, dark CSS connected, and index CSS. And in those files, I have just CSS custom properties defined, and browser will use only the ones that are matching the prefers color scheme thing, and they will be applied to index CSS. So you can use the same things for Retina, for example. If you split your media queries with background images or something you're using in your CSS into separate files, which is quite easy to make, I think. You can include them with lower priority. They will be still loaded, but with less priority, and only then, and they'll have higher priority when they're needed. So it's not a problem on Retina devices. The same thing with prefers reduced data. If you enable this option on your Chrome on Android, I believe it's the only place where it actually works, you'll have this media query matching your preferences, and your heavy CSS with some heavy graphics won't be loaded, or will be loaded with higher priority. The same for animation. If user decided that he hates animations or it makes them sick or something, you can enable this property in their browser or operating system, and your animation CSS won't be loaded with high priority. It won't be rendering blocking anymore. So yeah, it's more than just a window width. It's more than that, and there are many user preferences that we can actually match in media queries. And yeah, I think the most interesting part of this talk you've been waiting for, how to make this work in your code base. So there are some tools that I mentioned already: PostCSS Media Min Max plugin, PostCSS Extract Media Query, Combine Media Query plugins. Yeah, you can do something with them to extract your CSS and yeah, things like that, to go from your modular approach when you're writing CSS in every file for every component, to combined approach when you have multiple bundles for specific breakpoints. There's also a Webpack Media Query plugin. We can do something with your Webpack config probably. But you know, the problem is it's really complicated. It depends on your the way you work with CSS, the way your site is built. So there are many tools to be written to make it work. And at the moment, I have only idea for you. At the moment, I have an idea that your CSS is blocking your rendering while loading. And if you're putting your base 64 graphics and terrible SAS or less selectors, that doesn't make any sense, and make your CSS bigger, you're blocking rendering. Even if you do just this and you optimize your CSS size, it will be worth it. But if you'd like to go further, you can start from Retina images, you can start from animations, you can start from dark or light theme, and then slowly make your way into splitting your CSS bundle into mobile, tablet, desktop, breakpoint parts, different parts. And at some point, it might work for you. I think with this knowledge for the community, it's totally possible to make it work. But yep, it's in your hands to make it work. You have an idea, you can try and see how it works. And basically, this is it. I have just a few things for you. Just some things that I mentioned here, some demos, some similar ideas by Adam Argyle from Chrome DevRel team. And you can find me almost everywhere using this nickname, Pepples Bay, on every social network, in every chat and application, like almost everywhere. I mean, even on Facebook. And you can find those slides You can open those in browser by this link. It's conditionally adaptive /en, because without slash, you'll find the Russian version of this talk. Slightly outdated. The English version is a bit newer. And yep, you can play around with the demo I showed you with those desktop, tablet, and mobile tomato, plum, and wheat backgrounds in your browser using this link, and see it actually that it actually works. And I'm ready to answer some of your questions.
Great. Thank you, Vadim. Just wanted to mention that after this, we will, of course, post all the links to the slides and in the meetup, on the meetup page. And also, once we are done with editing the videos, so the videos will be published on YouTube, and in the description, we'll also add all these links. So cool. You'll be able to follow them. Yeah, so if anyone has a question, please raise your hand. And now, right, seems like we have a very humble and shy audience today. I do have a question, actually. So it seems like with this approach, the key thing is that the browser actually well, respects this media attribute, and it only starts rendering when the well, it starts rendering when all the necessary CSS is loaded, right? So and I think even if you just write this modular CSS in the files, without this, it wouldn't make sense still, right? Well, apart from just the structure of the code, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if you have like hundreds of CSS files, it will definitely slow down the rendering, because even on HTTP2, it's still complicated to load a bunch of files. So it's better to have single one or just a few of them. And it doesn't matter how you develop. If you want to take the full advantage of this approach, you need to include those files with some hints to a browser, which one of them are applicable where. So first of all, you need to have the same number of breakpoints. Like usually, sometimes it's just 3, 4, 5. Sometimes there are like hundreds of them. It depends on how you actually make it. So if you have like your design just for mobile, tablet, and desktop, it's much easier. But if it's your own product, you usually have different media queries for almost every component, and they could vary a lot. And this makes it much more harder to split those into separate files. But it's still doable, I think. You can split them into groups, not exact groups, but some groups. I forgot to mention that if you have those media attributes on your links, you have all the styles with the same breakpoint, you can actually remove media from your CSS. This attribute will replace those nested @media things. So you can just have your plain CSS without any media. But if you have a bunch of breakpoints, you will still have to include those with media in your group of files, a group of breakpoints, and then include the whole variety of this group in this media expression. So it's not a silver bullet, not at all, but it makes you think, like, is there a way I can improve the loading of CSS of my web application? And yeah, if you have fixed breakpoints, it would be so much easier to do. In some cases, it would be almost impossible, I believe.
Yeah, it seems like it's just an interesting approach to like how do you approach the developing the CSS styles. And by the way, I know you mentioned it a little bit, but how does it actually work the same way in other browsers than Chrome?
Yeah, it does.
So Firefox and Safari.
Yeah, and even if it doesn't work the same way, well, I tested, it works. But even if it doesn't work the same way, browser's gonna load them in any way. So it's not like you're gonna lose your desktop version or tablet version if it's not supported. If it's not supported, browser fall back to some basic behavior by just loading and including and blocking rendering. So it's not gonna be it's safe to use. I tried it. I tested it.
Cool. Nice.
But I didn't have a chance to automate it yet. But one day.
Yeah. Well, you started this. Maybe someone will pick it up and do this. Oh, I see there is a hand from Jose. Okay, you can now unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hey there.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Well, first, it was amazing. Nice point of view and nice discovery, nice talk. It was nice. And I remember that in the beginning you mentioned, for example, that we can import CSS on JS, for example. And would that also apply? I don't know if it's well, it's doable by code to have these several files and programmatically import them, but would it have another better way to import multiple CSS files on JS and improve?
I got the question. When you're importing something into CSS by using @import and then specifying the file, you can actually specify the same media queries just like you do in HTML. So you can write import file and then max width something, and it's going to work. But hiding your CSS inside of another CSS file, it's not a good idea, because browser will it take more time for browser to understand that something's going on, and it won't be available to browser at the first moment once it parses HTML. But in JavaScript, it's not the real importing syntax. I mean, it's real for you, like it's real for Webpack. It goes there and it imports and bundles CSS files together, but it depends on how you actually put it in HTML. And by using those imports in your JavaScript, you can actually write a loader for your Webpack that would split those files based on breakpoints and then include it the way I showed you. And this is the only way to make it actually work, to make it performant enough to be useful, to include it in HTML. So it is possible to use the modern import syntax in your JavaScript. There's an idea for CSS modules to be like native ones, not the old CSS modules, but new CSS modules that could be imported into your JavaScript and used in constructible style sheets, all this modern new things. And but at the end of the day, you still need them in your HTML to make it work. So it totally depends on you. Currently with Webpack or some other bundler, you'll have to analyze it and split it into files and then put it in your resulting HTML. If you don't have any HTML coming from the server, if you're building all parts of your application on the fly, it will be less efficient. So with server-side rendering, it will work better. But I think it's still possible to update your head with links for the browser with those media attributes, and only the needed files will be loaded. So I haven't tried it myself, but it should work this way. but server-side rendering is always better. I hope I answered your questions.
Yes. Thanks. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
All right. I think there's no more hints. So yeah, thank you, Vadim. It was a very, very interesting presentation. I think, yeah, I'm really, I want to try it. Just, you know, just after watching this, just want to try and, you know, verify for myself that it actually does work this same way, like look at the performance tab and stuff. So yeah, thank you for sharing this. Right, so we are a little bit behind the schedules, or ahead, I'm sure. So I would suggest to just go to the second talk here. And yeah, so our second speaker is Dmitry Telpekin, and he's, well, actually, he's sitting right in front of me over here. We're in the same room. And well, we've been working together for several years now. And right now, Dima is leading the development of the Surfly proxy and the JavaScript sandbox here at Surfly. But the true story goes that before joining Surfly, he has single-handedly developed a very similar solution that in some cases worked even better than ours. So we were definitely very happy to hire him several years ago. And I'm personally very excited about this talk because he's going to share some black magic with us, some practical tricks on JavaScript debugging. So yeah, please welcome Dmitry Telpekin. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Maxim, for this warm introduction. I'm really touched. And let me share my screen. I guess it should work like this. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so Max already presented me, and today I want to talk with you about debugging JavaScript. Basically, the thing that I suppose most of the listeners do, maybe even on everyday basis. So yeah, I'm gonna cover a few topics from console.log to some more advanced tricks or techniques. So let's just continue. Starting our presentation, accepting the terms. Okay, probably not accepting. Let's check what's going on here. So this button is expected to start the presentation. We have simple on-click handler that goes to this function. And very convenient, we already have some logging here. And if terms are not accepted, it's expected to do nothing. Otherwise, it should navigate. But terms, we accepted the term, so it should be true. And in console, we actually see that, okay, it's not true, it's on. Not what we want. And let's check where this terms accepted goes. We initialize it here, and then it's expected to be changed here. Oh, sorry guys, sorry. I'm gonna fix this one. I hope pretty fast. The debugger goes here. Yeah, in Chrome, you basically can edit the code right in the browser. It not always works smooth, but why I did that, I don't know. I just reloaded the page. The debugger goes here. And we're gonna check why this terms accepted is not equals to true when we save the file. And yeah, now finally the breakpoint works. And we can see that a value of the terms checkbox is on. Not exactly what we expected. If I'm not mistaken, in checkbox, we should actually have some other property like checked. Yeah, checked. That's what we need here. We fix our code and then we can continue with the presentation. We can remove the breakpoint, save the file, and now, yeah, the magic just worked. And here you saw basically the kind of default way of debugging JavaScript when you actually have access to the code. You can just put console.logs or debugger statements wherever you feel like putting them. And that's it. I hope everybody knows and uses that. No need to stop on this anymore. But one trick I want to show you is that you can use debugger in combination with set timeout right in browser console. Why do you need this, you may ask? And you may need this when you want to debug some annoying, sometimes auto-closing models or drop-downs or wherever. Like here we have one here with a nice dock, and we have a button that, as you can see, is not working. I'm clicking it very hard, and we want to debug it. The process should be straightforward. You press here, but the model is gone. You press again, and you're just not fast enough to catch it. Okay, we still can use inspect. Yeah, okay, so now we see on the right, like the code. No, it's gone once again. So we can see the model, it's here, but once the mouse leaves the document, it disappears. And that is the case when using the debugger with set timeout may be extremely helpful. We just run it, we open the model that we want to debug. Nice, we finally stopped, and we can use just regular debug tools that we used to. And we once again see simple on-click handler with a grammar mistake. I think it should go like that. And let's hope that it will work. Nice. Okay, so that one is working with a small magic of set timeout and debugger statement. Let's continue. So next, I think the most important topic here is just the regular breakpoints that we have in JavaScript code. I should have some JavaScript code here where we can play with it a little bit. Let's remove all the breakpoints that I had before. Sorry for that. Yeah. So here we go, some JavaScript code, and in most cases, it just right-click on the line, add breakpoint. That one I also believe should be familiar to you. It just stops on this line wherever you press the button. You also have we also have conditional breakpoints in the Chrome, and I think it's most of the major browsers, maybe even in IE11. Here you can actually write some condition. If that condition will be true, then the debugger, like the breakpoint, will actually fire. So let's do the opposite condition to what we have here. Yes, and it fired. So our condition was no matter what. Basically, it's fired because the result of the expression that we had here returned true. Also, we have log points, which is same console.log statement, but in form of a breakpoint. Pretty straightforward to use. Yeah, we see our message that I put here. And the last but not the least is never pause here. So you can see that we have this debugger statement that already actually annoyed me quite a lot. And we can quite easily put never pause here, and then it will never fire. Sometimes it's very convenient when you already have tons of the breakpoints in your project and debugger statement. You just put it here and it works. And it also works with code with pause on code and uncode exceptions. So now I activated this breakpoints in the top right corner. And if I press the button, now we have breakpoint here inside try cage and in throw outside of the try cage. It works completely the same way. We just put never pause here, and we can leave without annoying breakpoints that we don't want to have. Yeah, that's it. And the trick that I have here is executing the code without actually stopping with conditional breakpoints. And I believe, yeah, we cannot proceed to the next slide unless we resolve another. How? What happened? I don't know. Unless we resolve another issue here. Yes, it's not working. Next button just not does anything. So let's debug it and try to find out what's wrong there and how our trick will help us. So this time event listener, yeah, event listener is assigned to the button object, not as on click attribute, but still we can easily navigate to the code and we have the handler of the button. Well, it's also pretty straightforward. We have a Boolean variable declared. If it's not false, then we have alert that we already saw, and default behavior of the click is prevented and navigation is not happening. So basically, we don't want this code to be executed. And I think the most straightforward way to achieve it is just to change the allowed variable, which we can actually achieve with conditional breakpoint. So yeah, as listed in the slide, we can just do allowed equals to false, and then just return false once again. So, okay, no, we need true, sorry. We need true and we return false. So this code, this breakpoint will actually never fire, but this code will be always executed. That's the point. So we changed the value, but we don't want to actually pause. So it's just like a hotfix, a patch that we apply to the code. And let's see, yeah, it just works. And the best part that I like about that kind of fixes, that it works even if you reload the page. It just stays there, which is nice. Okay, so next topic that I wanted to cover is like other breakpoints that we have in our DevTools. First is DOM breakpoints, which you can activate in Elements panel. You can quite easy use a break on subtree modification, attribute modification, or notch removal. So if, for example, some button that you're interested in modified, some code is changing this attribute, you just break on attribute modification and it's done. In next moment, any other code will touch attributes of your nice button, it will fire and you will easily catch this. Next one is Char and fetch breakpoints. When you want to stop on any HTTP request that come in from your page, well, not any, but just Char and fetch, you can just do that and you will catch all the requests. You can also apply some basic string filters on this if you want just a specific request. Very convenient in some specific cases. The last but not the least is event listener breakpoints that we have under event listener breakpoints. What a surprise. Yeah, until like 2 days ago, I actually thought that this section is quite useless because you have just irregular events, same as you have on a page, like keyboard events. What else? Mouse events, everything that you can assign like listeners to the document or body by yourself, but you have a separate tab in DevTools. But except of those, you also have very convenient tools that are not present anywhere else. For example, you can pause on set timeouts or when the set interval is fired, something very specific, and that can save you a ton of your time just by doing one click. Yeah, quite a lot of interest in there. It makes sense just to look through all of those, like Windows, close. script first statement that will stop on execution of the first line of any script of the page. Like even here, if I just reload the page, yeah, you see that a script, we've got a breakpoint on the script that was executed even before any of elements is loaded. And I believe that should be one of the web extensions that are executed before page load. Just a very fancy tool that also can be very helpful in very specific situation. Let's continue. Yes. The next one is I found very interesting is property breakpoints. The first interesting fact about that one is that it's implemented only in Firefox. So to have a small demo, we need to switch the browser to a different one. Yeah, hello Firefox. Yeah, and the slide is broken here. You see it's same page, but styles are different and the content is different. So it's a nice chance to investigate what actually happened here and how property breakpoints can be useful. We can see that error content is loaded, and we also have a couple of templates with article and error. Yeah, like error template is the same content that we have here. So most likely it came from this template to the main document. Somehow let's find the usages maybe of this ID to find where it was used. In Firefox, well, and in Chrome itself, you can just use Ctrl+Shift+F or Command+Shift+F to search for any string in any part of the in any source code of the document. And yeah, we see the small strange snippet which is flying somewhere in the air. Let me try again. It just looks weird. Okay, wherever. We see a small snippet. I think HTML page was not rendered for some reason. But yeah, it should be located, yes, on our HTML page. It's here, and in sources, it's here. Which basically does get element by ID of our templates and saves them to some variables that I believe should be used somewhere in other places of code. So let's find the usage of this template error. Same search and no results. So we are in a situation when we know that some interesting properties are located here and they are later in code somehow used in the document. But we can't find these usages, and this is the place where we can try to use property breakpoints. Yes, okay, so we have a debugger during the page loading, no content is still on the page.
Try to increase the zoom. Might help.
Okay, let me try to increase the zoom so you can see more. Yeah, so we have a breakpoint here, and what we can see that in window we have templates object with the properties that we are interested in, and in Firefox we can just right click on it, use break on, and we are particularly interested in property get. So we do this, and now wherever anybody accesses template error property of our object, then the breakpoint is expected to fire. Let's check this. We continue execution, and yes, we've got the code that we're interested in that actually loads an error template. And it's interesting because you can see the normal template is loading, but I believe, yeah. So what happens here, we have DOM-content loaded event that expected to load an article, then load some styles, and if something went wrong, the error template will be shown. So we go up to stack to this place, so we can check what is the actual error that happened. yeah, we can access the properties in console, very convenient. And it's a legal constructor in this line. Okay, so we tried to use new fancy experimental CSS style sheet constructor in Firefox, but it's only present in Chrome and Chromium-based drivers browsers at the moment. So yeah, okay, it's failed. It's kind of expected. We need to design our page better next time. But we still want to see the slide, and I think we can just execute load template with article. Okay, and that should be enough for us. So we saw like the power of property breakpoints that can lead you to the places where interesting properties were used, like the simplicity of just simple breakpoints. And if you look how it's implemented, if you want to look how it's implemented, you can call getOnPropertyDescriptor on interesting property with this breakpoint, and you will see that Firefox actually inserts their own getter and setter that stops your code. And the nice thing about that is that you can easily implement it by yourself. I have a small code snippet here. Let's try to use it. So we declare an object with property, and then we redefine this property with debugger statements in getter and setter. So now I believe if I will just do object.prop. Yes, now we catch, we caught this access of the property. That's nice because that approach can be used in any browser, not only Firefox, and you can also insert any extra code needed. You can have like a hotfixes, patches, wherever you like to continue your debugging process. Yeah, that's kind of it with property breakpoints. Let's go to the next slide. Which is native overrides. Let's remove this. Yeah, native overrides is basically same it's the same approach of rewriting properties and functions, but regardless the native browser APIs. We kind of have a nice candidate here with this annoying alert firing every 3 seconds. I don't want this to happen, so I can stop it. I can just replace the alert function in the window. It should be as simple as as this. Yes, we just replaced alert with null, and now we can see that error happened. The code that was firing this annoying messages just failed to do that. But instead of replacing this null, you can also put a function with a breakpoint to some extra logic to catch this exact place where it happened. Yeah, very simple and convenient. And it looks like to unlock the content of our form, we also need to complete some subscription form. Okay. Well, okay, this form looks also quite broken. Yeah, backspaces just add backspace text to the input, not what we expected. Okay, and we actually need a proper value here. So what have we got? We have an input, and somebody or something, some code corrupts the value of this input. It works fine with the text. But if I press any special keys like shift backspace, yeah, add symbol, it's totally broken. So let's try to investigate who actually does this. This happens on some key event, I expect, because yeah, with mouse I can easily interact with the input, but it's still annoying. So let's check the events that we have here, and Okay, so on input itself, there are no event listeners. On ancestors of the input event, there are quite a lot of event listeners. So it's kind of a dead end, and we still want to fix this input to proceed with our subscription that we never asked for. But let's move on. So let's check this input element. We can store it as a global variable, so we can have the input object as a temp1. And we are particularly interested in value field of this input. We can try to use same technique as on previous slide. We can override the getters and setters for the value of this input. So in any moment when somebody will try to access or change this value, we will cache it. Sounds good, sounds like a plan. Let's do that. So we will need something like object define property. Temp1 is our input. Value is our property. And we need get with debugger inside and set. Basically same. Okay, so what we've got is an input with replaced value property. So now we expect that if anything like not native will try to access this input. Oh, that actually just happened. Yeah, so I press the button and we can now see who does this. It says it's from jQuery 3.6. I'm not sure if it's a native behavior of this library, but let's see. Yeah, something definitely wrong with this function. And yeah, we want to not change the value here. How we can do this? Okay, if we change the sanitize email variable here to false, I believe this code will never be executed, and maybe we will be able to see the content of the slide. Yes, we've got a setter breakpoint in the same place. Yeah, because we have get and set, yeah, in the same one. Okay, and now it's not working. Yeah,
You didn't hit enter in the console.
Oh yeah, sorry. I forgot to submit my code here. So let's go here and yeah, sanitize email should be false, not return false, no Chrome, just false. Done. Let's try again. Just letter, just backspace. Yeah, it finally works. So we just fix this email input. And done. Yeah, we finally got the content of the slide. Now a lot of new information. So yeah, we already did rewriting of alert function to something that we want. And this approach can be used with any native functions if you want to debug or trace who uses them. And with native properties, in this example, we just rewrited an value property on the input object. But in some cases, you may need to do the same on the prototype of the input element class. That is one level deeper, but in that case, you will be like 100% sure that no code can reach the real value of the input without you knowing that. Yeah, and the trick of the day is console.trace. That allows you to see where this code, this console.trace was called from. It's very convenient to use it in combination with conditional breakpoints, where you can just add console.trace like here. So, and basically trace where this or that function is called from. The same can be achieved with ur.stack. It gives you the stack trace of the current place where this code was executed. And the nice thing that you can actually work with the stack as with just a plain string. For example, if the stack trace includes some function that you are interested in, and once again, you can put this in conditional breakpoint. And in that case, this conditional breakpoint will only break when in stack trace we have some probably function named function. So you can break on condition of like who called this function. Very special case, but once again, one day it may save you a few hours of debugging, so why not? And yeah, that's kind of all slides that I had for you. And yeah, the question that you may ask, like, why do you need like all this kind of breakpoints, overrides, descriptors and stuff when we just have console.log that is applicable in most cases? And the answer for this question is comes to like my own belief that debugging JavaScript code is very much like investigation of adventure. So you never know how you will end this process, what you will find, and when you actually find the reason of any puzzling bug, you usually enjoy yourself because you achieved that. And that is fun until the moment when you stuck. And when you're stuck and you don't want how to proceed, the code seems to be like just not working and you don't know what to do. That is not the best feeling in the world. And to have this feeling as like rare as possible, it's very useful to know like all technologies and techniques like that can help you in particular situation. And of course, what I have taught you about is not enough. The dev tools in modern browsers are like huge with a lot of tabs and a lot of useful functionality. So yeah, I recommend you to visit Chrome DevTools documentation. They have a lot of information and articles and tutorials about how to do stuff in a browser. Of course, if it's applicable for you. If you can live a jolly life using console.log, then go ahead. You're a happy person, I think. Yeah, that's kind of it. That's everything that I wanted to tell you about.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Dima. Does
anyone have questions?
Yeah, you were muted when you started to talk.
I'm not muted now, right? Yeah, so does anyone have any questions for Dima? I hope you could all keep up with it was pretty fast. But it's a lot of information. All right, so the shy audience, I guess. Then a question from me. So, well, you touched a little bit upon the Firefox, but how does it work in Safari? Can you do these things? Is it something that we should avoid at all costs, or?
Well, it's a good question. Don't think that I can properly answer for that one because I just don't use Safari. Yeah, I don't have Mac. I believe most of that tricks should be available there just because it's like DevTools. It's quite plain, especially the ones that you can use just in console, like overriding prototypes, accessing property descriptors. It's just JavaScript. It's nothing about DevTools. And yeah, these approaches are like browser agnostic.
Cool.
Yeah, I definitely learned a few tricks from your presentation, so thank you very much. And if no one else has questions, I see a lot of people are happy, and I see a lot of nice words in the chat. So thanks again. Yeah, so then I guess we can get to the next and the final part of today's event, which is the web platform quiz. So web platform quiz is something that we do for well, on every event, and it's exactly what it is. It's a quiz, and today we have as a prize we have this bag of goodies sponsored by Surfly. Nice bag made of recycled materials. So inside there are some goodies like I think there is a mug. There are some Dutch waffles, and on top of that, we're going to give away a 50 euro worth gift card for Steam. So like they have some, I believe they have some nice Black Friday sales there, so you can get yourself a nice video game. So yeah, the way it will work, let me share my screen. I think I should let me do it first. So you can participate from your phone or from your computer. And basically what you will need to do, you will need to join this link. Just a sec. I will post it in the chat here. And I'm gonna share my screen now.
Should we post it in YouTube as well?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. The problem with YouTube is that there is a delay there. So yeah, so you can go to follow that link. I will post it there anyways, just in case. Or you can just go to myquiz.org and enter this code that you can see on your screen. 788332. So the quiz is consists of 10 questions. They cover all kinds of things about web development, a little bit of history, a bit of JavaScript, CSS, HTML. So could be anything. Well, I'm sure. I mean, don't feel bad if you can't answer some of these questions, because they're supposed to be tricky, and it's definitely I don't know, like if you guys can, if someone can answer all of them, well, we are hiring. So let's give people a minute to join. I see 5 users at the moment. Yeah. So is there a? I don't see the chat. So we have, I believe, 7 or 10 people, and I see 6 users joined. Yeah. So while you're joining, a little bit about the scoring. So as I said, there are 10 questions. The questions will be multiple choice. So on most questions, there is only one correct answer. And there are 2 questions where you can pick more than one. and they are explicitly marked, like choose all applicable or something. For each question, you'll have 60 seconds to answer. And after each question, we'll pause a little bit, and so you will see the correct answer. And so everyone is eligible for the prize except those who participated in making the questions. Okay. 8 active users, 9 all users. Not sure what that means. If you are a user that's not active, please become active. Sure. Okay, let's give it 30 seconds and then we'll start. If you guys have any questions, there's a good time to ask in the chat before we start. Oh yeah, I didn't say about the scoring. Sorry. So you'll get 5 points for each correct answer. And then if you are the first to answer, you'll get 3 extra points. Second gets 2 points, and third person to answer correctly will get 1 extra point for each question. So it makes sense to answer quickly, but it makes more sense to answer correctly. Be careful. Worldwide delivery for the price, absolutely. We can ship, yeah. And also, yeah, because it's the Steam price, you'll need to let us know about your handle on the Steam, or actually any other platform that supports this kind of stuff. So it can be Nintendo Switch if you look into that. Okay, so we're gonna start in 3, 2, 1, go. Oh no, sorry. I'll start. Yes, 3, 2, 1, go. The first question, some history. We ought to know our roots. In March 1989, Tim Berners-Lee submitted a proposal document to his superiors at CERN. This document described a system that would later become the World Wide Web. So what was the title of that document? And the options are Towards an Interconnected Hypertext Management System, a proposed approach to distributed information networks, information management, a proposal, or Web 3.0, the future or blockchain. This picture here is, by the way, the actual original schematics from that document. Okay, 10 seconds to go. Received 11 answers from 10 people. How's that possible? Not sure, but I trust in this platform. All right, and the correct answer is information management, a proposal, and 9% of the people answered correctly, which is quite impressive, let's say. So we have, well, 9% is actually just one person. Good job. Let's go ahead. The second question. When was the defer attribute on script elements introduced? It was first introduced, not many people know it, but it was first introduced in Internet Explorer long time ago, long time before the standard. The question is, was it the Internet Explorer 4, 9, or 11? A little bit of history as well, but not all of the questions are history. Okay. 10 seconds left. And time's up. All right, so it was actually first introduced in Internet Explorer 4. I believe it was 98. Yeah, it says 98. Oh, sorry, I didn't pause. So next question. A little bit of HTML and DOM APIs. So we have an iframe element with whose SRC attribute is set to an empty string. And the question is, how does it look from the JavaScript side? If you read SRC as a property on that element, what will you get? The empty string, about blank, or the location of the current page? So 20 seconds to go. We have 3 leaders. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and time's up. The correct answer is the location of the current page. Surprisingly, the absent SRC attribute would actually give you an empty string. But if you do have an attribute and it's set to an empty string, then the JavaScript property is actually the location of the current page. Not sure how surprising it is for you, but for me it is. It was. And that's by the spec. Okay, next question. Autoplayed videos. Chrome and other browsers block autoplayed videos. So which of these factors does not help in unlocking autoplay? So basically, 3 of these are considered by Chrome when deciding whether to allow or not to allow the autoplay. And one of these factors is actually irrelevant for this specific case. And we're talking about Chrome. Because who knows how the Safari does this intelligent thing. But Chrome at least has it documented. So 9 seconds, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, the correct answer is the domain. So it doesn't matter whether the video itself is served from the same domain. It doesn't actually affect or help or specifically in unblocking autoplay. And it's called autoplay policy, I believe. So you can Google for that if you're interested. Okay, next question. Browser extensions. Which of these you cannot do with a browser extension? And again, I believe this is actually the case for all the browsers, but just to be safe, we say Chrome, because it's a de facto standard. So which of these you cannot do with a browser extension? Change default browser icon, bypass same origin policy, add polyfills to the browse pages, or add functionality to DevTools. And I see we have 6 people who have answered correctly, at least one question, which is great. Okay, time's up. And the correct answer is changing the default browser icon. You can't do that. Everything else you can actually achieve with the browser extension. Next question. This is kind of a tricky one. We have 5 forms, HTML forms, and this is actually multiple choice answer, so you can choose more than one. There is more than one correct answer. Which forms will actually submit on enter? So we have one form with a single text input, another form with text and checkbox, another form with text and number input, one more form with two texts and a submit button, submit element, sorry, and another form with two text elements and a button that is connected externally. So some of these will submit when you hit enter in the input field, but some of them won't. Okay, time's up. All right, so the correct answers were everything except the third option. So according to the spec, enter will submit a form. To make it submissible by enter, you need to have either exactly one text-like input field or have a submit button inside. So we see that the third form, it has two text-ish input elements. So number behaves a lot like text. So and we don't have a submit button. So which means that it will not be actually submitted if you hit enter. Okay, next question in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. HTTP. Which of these mechanisms will not work with HTTP 3? CSS image sprites, sticky cookies, and TLM authentication, or TLS server name indication. Okay. I see we have a couple of leaders, but especially the first place is someone by the nickname of Trick. And I will need to match it with the person in the Zoom meeting. So mind that. All right. So the correct answer is NTLM authentication. So the thing is that if you're familiar with NTLM authentication, it works on a TCP level. So it doesn't authenticate an HTTP request or stream, but it authenticates the TCP connection. And since HTTP 3 and actually HTTP 2 also, they multiplex multiple HTTP streams in one connection, this thing is just not applicable. You can't use it. And the browsers, whenever they see NTLM authentication, they just fall back to HTTP 1 to make it work. Next question, HTML again. So we have a few markups and only one of them is correct according to the syntactically correct according to the HTML spec. I think many of them will actually work and do what you expect them to do, but there is only one that's actually correct. Right. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, we have a nice distribution there. The correct answer is the last one. So you actually can include BR tag inside the B tag, but all the others are semantically incorrect. And I would personally actually answer style inside the body because I know it works, but apparently it's not correct. And yeah, so for this, to check these things, there is a nice service. It's called Can I Include? There is a link there, can include.glitch.me. It's just works like can I use, but you just put 2 tags there and it tells you whether it's allowed or not. Okay, and we have a new leader. Nice. Final question. In which cases, oh no, not final, sorry. Second to last. In which cases a cross-origin fetch request will have origin null? Choose all correct answers. So this one also has multiple correct answers. In which cases a cross-origin fetch request will set an origin header to null. A cross-origin redirect, document refer policies, no refer, when the request comes from a sandbox iframe, and or requesting page is served over HTTP. Oh, full list is not available. All right. Okay, time's up. And the correct answers were the first and the third. So indeed, after a cross-origin redirect, if you have a cross-origin fetch that results in a redirect, and then this second request will actually contain a origin null if it points to the third domain. And also, if the request comes from a sandbox iframe, you'll also have origin null. It's by the spec. And the refer policy is actually true for font course requests. But since this question is for specifically for fetch requests, that's not correct. Okay, and now the final question in 1 second. JavaScript, pure JavaScript. Which of these snippets will not navigate the page? There is only one correct answer. All of them, except one, will navigate the page. But one of them won't. Some close competition. This is exciting. We have the top 3 are so close to each other that it can be anyone's game right now. All right. And the correct answer was the third. So the location $.href is an optional chaining operator, and that's only for getting values. You can't use it for setting. Yeah, and I think we have a winner, don't we? Yes. So Max Zuzin, or Zuzin, sorry if I don't pronounce it correctly. Congratulations, you have just won this and a 50 euros Steam card. Please contact us. I'm not sure if you're actually in the Zoom session, right? Oh, that's one of the YouTube watchers. Nice. Okay, well, then you can contact us at through our email on our page. It's orgs@webcore.group, or you can just contact me directly on the meetup, and we'll figure out how to deliver the prize to you. Congratulations. Also, honorable mentions. The second place just 1 point behind someone named Trick. Good job as well. Just a little bit of luck. And Mir on the third at the third place. Also, congratulations. Good job. So I'm gonna stop sharing now. Thank you so much for being with us today. I think we have some pizza on the kitchen, and yeah, that was pretty cool to have you guys here. Unfortunately, again, we couldn't host the physical meetup this time, but that's not our fault, and we'll do our best to actually host it physically next time. And if you are around Amsterdam, join us. As I mentioned already, all the videos and all the slides, presentations from today will be published both on the meetup page and in the description under YouTube videos. We have a form for if you want to speak on one of the next events. We have a form on our main website, webcore.group. You can just fill it in and we'll consider you for the next event. Please don't hesitate. Any ideas are welcome. And of course, well, thank you again. And if you liked it, just come again next time and subscribe to our meetup page. That's the most important. And tell your friends, tell your colleagues. That's it. And if you are in Amsterdam, just come by one of our meetups, physical meetups. And I think with this, I want to thank everyone, all the speakers, and for being with us today. Hopefully see you next time. Thank you guys. And I'm gonna